Dear ladies and gentlemen, hope you find your seats that we can start with today's conference. Dear members, dear partners of NALED, and all of you who are watching this event online, welcome to the 13th Annual Conference on Economic Reforms in Serbia. Today's event is devoted to the new edition of the NALED's Grey Book, the most important reform results from the last year, as well as defining the economic agenda. We will be talking with the leaders from the government of Serbia and the international community. We'll be working on jointly and together to achieve these goals. We will be awarding teams and individuals from the public sector who have contributed significantly to overcoming the crisis through development of efficient services for citizens and businesses. Awards will be also presented to the media representatives who have contributed to promotion of reforms in the interests of the citizens and businesses. The Grey Book this year, too, is bringing in 100 key recommendations for overcoming administrative barriers. Also, 10 measures by NALED's managing board decision have been identified as key. We would like to invite you to vote online via online survey for 3 most important recommendations. The results will be presented during this today's conference. I would like to invite Mr. Dejan Djokic, the president of the executive, the chairperson of the executive board of NALED, to present the priorities for this year and to present the Grey Book recommendations. Please. We're expecting the Prime Minister to arrive soon, so I would like also to mention her, dear President of the Government of the Republic of Serbia, Mrs. Brnabić, Vice President of the Government of Serbia, Mrs. Mihajlović, dear Ministers, Your Excellencies, members and partners of NALED, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and pleasure to present the 13th edition of the Grey Book. It contains 100 new and innovative recommendations for improved business environment. In these challenging times, strategic priorities have moved towards the most important issues, such as preserving lives and keeping existing jobs. We did the most we could, and we tried to assist where the help was most needed. Upon emergency declaration, the NALED proposed 10 priority measures to support businesses, as well as several dozens of sectoral recommendations. We also have set up the platform for donation collections for the most endangered communities. In 2020, 13 recommendations have been completely implemented during 2020 by the public sector. This is talking during the previous 12 years. Almost half of all the recommendations have been implemented so far. However, the current situation should not be, should not bring in complacency in terms of having much more efforts invested in 2021 and have things done all the way to the full extent. The Ministry of Finance has done the most. Despite the situation, a lot of procedures have been moved to digital sphere, such as the public procurement report that has been set up. Also, fiscalization law has been also adopted, which is a significant step forward, and also the system of e-invoices is also in the final stages of its implementation. Also, Ministry of Civil Engineering Construction has contributed a lot to implementation of the recommendations by delivering the decisions or decrees via to the so-called to the e-inbox of citizens and businesses, which was going to improve the situation in the real estate market. Also, electronic application of seasonal workers in agriculture that we successfully implemented has been also extended to other sectors such as hospitality business, tourism, and so on. Positive examples have been also seen in the work of the Ministry of Health and other ministries. For example, the debt crisis of the state-owned pharmacies issue has been resolved. The Grey Book for 2021 is different comparing to other editions. Why? Because 15 recommendations have been, given a COVID-19 token, which are the most important, actually, recommendations that have to be implemented for citizens to overcome the problems during the pandemics. They are related to digitalization and improvement of the healthcare system, regulating the work from home, and also reduction of the tax burden paid by citizens. See, the 13th edition of the Grey Book is also bringing in 13 new recommendations for the government of Serbia, and we have also assigned the 10 priorities, such as reduction of the tax and contributions that are being paid against the salaries, then elimination of paper receipts, and setting up a electronic health booklet, then improvement of the wastewater treatment system, and introduction of the online register of farms, so-called e-agrar. This is all the result of work of NALED, international institutions, and the government of Serbia. Big thanks to the Prime Minister Brnabić, and big thanks to all ministers who have actually shown their trust in us. We believe that only with the cooperation and through the dialogue we can eliminate the consequences of the pandemics and start up our economy. Again, big thanks to the EU, to the United States government, Germany, and other partners who have shown that they are reliable partners of the Serbia. Thanks to the Executive Office of NALED, to the Managing Board of NALED for their commitment to preparation of the latest edition of the Grey Book, but also for their initiatives that they're actually aimed at making Serbia a better place for living and work. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Đokić. Thank you for your introductory remarks. As we heard, without dialogue and without cooperation, there will be no high-quality reforms. Therefore, we would like to continue this event within our first session together towards fair competition. I would like to give floor to Ivan Milic, President of Fair Competition Alliance, as a moderator. He will present his panelists. Thank you very much, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for being here today with you and for being the moderator of this panel. It's fair competition is something that's one of the high priorities of the government and our partners. Here we have people who have done a lot in terms of achieving the fair competition here in Serbia, and I would like to introduce them. First to the Deputy Prime Minister of Serbia, Minister Mining and Energy, Professor Dr. Zorana Mihajlović. Thank you for being here. Also, Our Excellencies, the Ambassador of Germany to Serbia, His Excellency Thomas Schieb, and the Ambassador of Sweden to Serbia, Her Excellency Jan-Erik Mikael Lundin. Thank you very much. I would like to remind you that NALED and the government of Serbia have been cooperating since 2014 on developing and the implementation of various measures that contribute to achieving fair competitiveness environment in Serbia, such as combating shadowy economy via a master plan, also improvement of the Serbia's position on the World Bank's doing business list. And we see the results are there. So let's move on. First question for the Deputy Prime Minister. Mrs. Mihailovic as the chairperson of the task force for improvement of the competence in Serbia. You contributed to to achieving this the ranking of Serbia's ranking on doing business list. What are the most important reforms that would you like to single out as regards to that? Thank you. Stettin is a the unusual number, but I would like to congratulate you for the 13th edition. I hope that each year will have a less and less recommendation, meaning that we all work good. We did a lot of things on improving business environment in Serbia, and businesses are irreplaceable partners because know the best what's good, what's not good, and what can be better. And it's very important when you compare Serbia to the best countries or the best organized countries in the world. In 2020, regardless how difficult this year was, regardless how much things have changed, and we know that things will not be the same will not be the same in future. We adopted measures for further business environment improvements for 2021, 2023. This was done in June, and some amendments within the bankruptcy law, then the licensing of bankruptcy administrators, and such changes, actually are the result of what we heard, from businesses. We did a lot as regards to cadastre operation. All this can, speed up the process. Especially when we talk about the operations of the cadastre. Also, this helps. In the following sense, we can say that now investors left Serbia in 2020. Nobody told us that they wanna stay in Serbia anymore, regardless of how difficult 2020 as a year was difficult for all of us. We want to be best in all spheres, not only in issuing in construction permitting, and that's actually the plan of our. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next question is for Mr. Sheeb. The government of Serbia through GIZ, working with GIZ, has the German government through GIZ has supported the Serbian government a lot. And in all reforms that we already mentioned, can you tell us why a systemic fight against the shadow economy and against corruption is so important? And what examples from Germany you can mention in that regard?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Miletić, for having me. And also, I would also first like to congratulate Nalit on this latest edition of the Grey Book. So, great compliment. Now, as to your question, a shadow economies are bad for a number of reasons. And to name just a few, they hold back the economic growth, they create distortions in the labor market, they lead to foregone tax revenue due to underreporting of wages and output, to a suboptimal provision of public goods. They are a breeding ground for corruption. They are detrimental to the rule of law. And in the case of Serbia, as a result, they also make convergence with the EU difficult. So shadow economies are clearly an obstacle to fair competition, an obstacle to a level playing field. Now, I think it's almost a no-brainer. Formalized economic activities, transparency, and a sound legal framework pay off and lead to more investments, including those by German companies. And German companies are, there's definitely a positive trend, still the pandemic situation notwithstanding. There are regular surveys among companies active here in Serbia, and the vast majority says, well, we would reinvest in Serbia. But of course, there are certain deficits, and these deficits need to be addressed. And some of these deficits are here because the shadow economy is still rather strong. So fighting the shadow economy means creating more jobs, creating careers prospects for the younger and well-trained generations here in Serbia. But it is also important to emphasize, once the drivers of the shadow economy are identified, the respective measures must be calibrated in a way that economic activity is formalized without hindering entrepreneurship or cutting off incentives to work. And now coming back to your question, I think that the national program for countering the shadow economy you just mentioned is doing just that. And I am happy that NALED and GIZ are cooperating very successfully in implementing this program. I would just like to mention one of the important reforms which have been achieved in the context of this program. The reform to simplify electronic registration of seasonal workers in the agricultural sector. As of January 2019, if my numbers are correct, around about 44,000 seasonal workers, 50% women, are registered electronically. And this has led to social contributions of around about 3.5 million euros and 1.25 million taxes in 2019 and 2020. The second part of your question, how far could Serbia learn from Germany's lesson learned? Germany's approach to curbing the shadow economy is characterized by large-scale inspections of businesses and a rigorous criminal prosecution and sanctioning of non-compliance with the German law. For instance, in 2019, German authorities have completed about 116,000 criminal proceedings in connection to illegal employment alone. Yeah? So this shows how huge the challenge is, and it's going to remain a challenge, definitely. The shadow economy activities are estimated to around 10% of the GDP. So this is a vast amount of money, but it is an ongoing challenge, and it is fighting, countering shadow economy is a Sisyphus work for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your response. And it's great to hear and German investors that continues to Serbia. Thank you for that as well. Sljedeće pitanje za njegov...
Next question for His Excellency, Mr. Alandin, Ambassador of Sweden to Serbia. Thank you for being with us. The Swedish strategy of cooperation with Western Balkans recognizes the development of market economy and support to small and medium enterprises as priority. How do you estimate the improvement in economic reforms, and which ones do you see as key reforms to improve Serbian market?
Ja se čujem odlično. Evo, hvala na pozivu i baš mi je drago da prisustvujem konferenciji NALED-u.
I'm so glad to be here and to be present at the NALED conference. NALED is one of our most significant partners for cooperation with Serbia. A good example of an efficient partner from non-governmental sector. We cooperate with Serbia in different forms. We have been cooperating since 2001. We will continue until Serbia becomes an EU member, and maybe even later that through funds and institutions. We have been a member since 1995. So Serbia is on a good way, I would like to say. I'm here for the third time. I have been working in Belgrade. I have been working in Belgrade for the third time, and I can see improvements in infrastructure and economic environment, business environment. I can compare this to some previous periods when I was here. In 2019, the economic growth was 4% or almost 5%, and that is a really good sign. The World Bank says that the potential of Serbia is actually the growth was 7% if we take into account different factors. And the fact is that this hasn't been reached yet. We have more work to do until we reach that. There is a lot of work related to the rule of law and development of infrastructure. We should enter the 5G telecommunications, also finish some railway infrastructural projects so that foreign investors can feel that Serbia is the right place for investments. I can give you a few examples of how Sweden contributes to this context. We have about 200 Swedish companies that are present in the market of Serbia. They have learned that Serbia is a good place to do business, such as IKEA. And many more companies will come. I recently came back from Paraćin, where one Swedish company is going to join. So the Swedish Agency for Development and Swedish government, we have invested in cooperation with the Republic Geodetic Authority for the development of cadastre, so that investors can, through the internet, see what Serbia can offer in terms of real estate for investment, and that will simplify the monitoring and the decision-making on where to invest, and Serbia will be very much improved in terms of cooperation internationally. And what we develop with NALED is also the system for public procurement. Public procurement are now very important for Serbia, but we can do even better. And Serbia has gone further when it comes to public procurement, so we can offer you some solutions to produce 4 to 7% of economic growth per year. We don't have that we didn't have troubles that Serbia had in the past 20 or 30 years. That's why we reached, we actually reached a better place. But Serbia can do a lot, and Sweden will help. Thank you a lot for your answer. You know us really well, and you know what we can still do on our way towards improvements. And it is very good to have with us someone who knows us really well and who can judge that we made nice improvements. We invest into environmental protection so that in order to have energy efficiency and on the other hand, to keep the environment, the citizens and all of us who live in this country worked on preparing 4 laws which are given to the government for consideration, and we are now waiting for them to be adopted. That is the law on renewable resources of energy that will bring us a more modern approach to this issue. We would like to increase the production of energy from renewable resources. We introduced auctions, and another new thing, and that is that consumers can also be producers. We would like to see solar panels on houses, residential objects, facilities. We also took care about mini hydropower plants. We will not allow them to be built in protected areas. They will not give us that much energy, and they will ruin our environment. The law on energy efficiency is the second most important law and another important direction that Serbia will take, and that is that all of us from this country have a duty to reduce energy consumption. The country will help as much as possible, but that mustn't be just in certain municipalities or in certain buildings or just with rich or people. This will be one of the national aims. Something that is also important in electric energy sector, we need to invest in huge power plants, and we need to reduce the production from low-quality lignite and reduce this type of production. We are now trying to adopt new regulations, new plans for investments in the energy sector. We have a vision of new green Serbia, and I hope that we will, in several years, have 40% of our energy produced from renewable resources. You will have a lot of work in the coming period, and I hope that our next Grey Book will have more recommendations for your ministry. Mr. Sheep, the German Development Corporation has supported some measures from our national approach. Simplification of seasonal workers' registration in agriculture was one of the measures supported by you. Also, measures for initial businesses who are starting their business, and also we actually suggested these measures to be expanded. What is your further support to these measures?
We are quite happy with the results of our cooperation. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but all in all, we are very satisfied and happy. The Grey Book and all future versions will remain a very important guideline for our bilateral development cooperation, and the development cooperation programs, projects implemented by GIZ and KfW will very much focus on the recommendations contained in the Grey Book. I think in general, we will continue to support measures with the objective to improve the economic environment in Serbia in the broadest sense, so to say. Now, maybe a more concrete example, I understand cashless payments is also, it's a very important project. And in some sectors, areas, fields, cashless payments are already kind of the norm. Like court fees are being paid cashless. And we think in other administrative fields, this also should be possible. So this will be something we will focus on. And currently, the GIZ is analyzing how to replicate this successful reform you mentioned on the simplifying the e-registration in the agricultural sector, and looking into possibilities how to expand this system in other sectors like construction, tourism, and hospitality.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your response. I think that, as we've seen from the recent examples with
Hvala vam.
Digitalization, so we will continue to monitor these suggestions as well when it comes to other branches. Gospodine Lundin, sljedeće pitanje za vas jedna.
Mr. Lundgren, the next question for you. One of the recommendations that's been implemented in 2020 is introduction of the electronic public procurement system. You mentioned public procurement. That's in Sweden, something that's over there operating a bit better than here in Serbia. Well, nice to say that. Very nice to hear that from you. Serbia will work on the improvement of the system so that competition can be improved, and that these positive developments, of course, will improve the business environment, and will, of course, stimulate one of the most important part of the Serbian economy, and that's the small business. What can we learn from the Swedish experiences in this regard? Can you say a few more words about this topic? All right. Public procurements are of the greatest importance for any economy, and we're glad that we're going to work with knowledge on improving the public procurements. I remember my meetings with your people that we had 20 years ago, and I understood from my colleagues that public procurements in Serbia are now worth around 8% of GDP, which is around 4 billion euros. 8% is not a bad figure. Global figure is 12%. Swedish figure is 15%. So, a lot more can be done. Yes, the average number of bids is 2.5. This is not an optimal figure. It says that I talked to Swedish companies that are, having problems with the trust in public procurement. It's a sad thing to hear, but there are a lot of situations where Swedish companies said, we don't believe we are going to win that bid or that tender, so it doesn't, it's not worth, participating. It's not good. I'm not talking what's the real truth, but the fact that this mistrust is a big problem in Serbia, and of course Serbia and Serbians are losing money on that, and this is the area where we should work much more. It's a long-term activity, and hopefully improvements will be made. Another problem is that Serbian regulations are set in the way where most of the time the most important criterion is the lowest price. It can be a good criterion, but in Sweden it's only just one of important criteria. Then the longevity of the product, the energy consumption is also another criterion. Then maintenance, the life cycle costs, and other. These are, in Sweden, public procurements are more focused on that. This is not an easy discussion. That's why it's important to say that further work will be, activities will be implemented in that regard, and to make step-by-step progress. And one more thing, I think this would be the answer to what I had to say. There are other things that I have to find more, but okay, this is the core. Thank you for your frank responses. Thank you for the dialogue. Thank you for the experiences of the Swedish company. Of course, in NALED, we will continue to work with the Serbian government on further improvements in this regard. I would think that this she already made some improvements. Mrs. Mihailovic, a final question for you. Actually, we want to hear some support from you, but a lot of recommendations from the Grey Book are in the under responsibility of your ministry, and this is where you show a lot of success. So can we rely on your further support, coordination, and energy? That we will, invest effort. This is understood, of course. I missed to say that at the very beginning. It is. So I'm not talking only about regulations and laws, but when you have political support to conduct reforms, that's number one. The second step, of course, also very important, is that we participate in all that together. Here we have people, we worked on reforms together all these years, from doing business, let's see, European Union, British Embassy, German KfW Bank, Swedish government, I don't want to forget one NALED also. So we, when I say together, I don't think only about ministries. I think about businesses, all our international partners, non-governmental sector. So whatever we did all together, I don't know, reform of the railway or the gender equality projects, which I don't see is, in this book this year. Hopefully, I encourage NALED to work more on gender equality. Things that we wanted to reform in the big state-owned companies, we always did it together. For example, we need to explain that we can have e-permitting, construction permitting. When we started that project, we were 174th country of the world in terms of permitting procedure efficiency, but we succeeded. I think that with we will work through the task force, this coordination body. We will have new results for the benefit of our country above all. Thank you for, being so, for studying our great book in so many details. Mr. Schiff, final thoughts. Just one question. As you saw, the Deputy Prime Minister already learned about the details of the book. I hope you also study the book in detail. What recommendations you would identify as the key recommendation?
I have to disappoint you. Not that we didn't study the book, but we would not. We are a bit hesitant to pick out one certain priority or recommendation. So I think in the current situation, we think that all recommendations which help or whose implementation would help overcome the economic fallout of the current pandemic would be of utmost importance. And that it's also important to listen to the business community. So say now in this situation and how to overcome the fallout, et cetera, And again, what is I think also important now to strive for a intelligent, sustainable, inclusive recovery. It's also an opportunity to maybe focus more on things, very important dimensions like implementing the so-called green agenda. So intelligent, clever recovery and, so I hope it's okay that I didn't pick up a specific recommendation, but this would be our recommendation.
It's okay. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for your response. Gospodine Lundin, za kraj I za vas isto pitanje. Koju biste...
Mr. Lundgren, your final thoughts. What would you single out as the key recommendation? Then I would select wastewater treatment. Yeah. Why? This is one of the more important elements of not only environment and the quality of life, but also economic expansion. In late 60s, when we realized in Sweden that Baltic Sea has huge problems. We are still dealing with those problems today together with other countries, including Germany and Russia and so on. We learned a lot about the importance of that issue. It's not just treating water, the water that you're going to drink, but also, wastewaters might be treated. No untreated water should be released into a river. Serbia is starting up in that sphere, but we will strongly support the process. We have a lot of experiences in that. Money is there, both in Serbia and the European Union. And I think this story will have a happy ending. We are opening a new chapter of the economic development. Investments are key for economic development. Are going to Niš, have 2 days of negotiations related to creation of the first institute that's going to deal with the wastewater treatment issues. This is a very positive step ahead for the city of Niš. We are happy to support that. The last 2 years we worked with the technical documents on that level, but this will happen, and there will be a very modern institute, that wastewater treatment institute, and will be significant for other cities in Serbia. Wastewater treatment is of the greatest importance, not only for the environment, but also for the economic development. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are about to close this panel. I enjoyed this panel very much. Again, thank you, Mrs. Mihailovic, the Deputy Prime Minister of the government, and our dear Excellencies ambassadors. I hope you all enjoyed as participants, and I hope that this year we will set a new records in implementation of the in combating shadow economy, and of course in implementing recommendations of the Grey Book. Thank you very much again. Thanks to our panelists from me too. I would like to remind all present and those who are watching us online that they still have some time to vote to participate in online survey related to selecting 3 key recommendations. Just go to our webpage, to the page stated there, and select the priorities. The rank you see here you can see on the screen which one is leading currently. The first one is the reduction of the taxes and contributions paid against salaries, of course. Let's move to the next session. The topic that was the most discussed during the last year. This is about digitalization and digital economy. I would like to invite Željko Tomić, President of EGovernment Alliance, to join us over here as a moderator. I would like to invite his interlocutors, Minister of Labor, Employment, Veterans and Social Affairs, Dania Kisić-Tepavčić, then the Ambassador of the United Kingdom to Serbia, Her Excellency Shane McLeod, and Head of the EU Delegation to Serbia, His Excellency Sam Fabrizi. I would like also to ask Mihailo Jovanović, Director of the Office for IT and E-Government, to join us over here. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to moderate this panel on behalf of the E-Government Alliance of NALED on digital economy. Previous session or the panel showed that there is no question or measure issue where digitalization and the prefix, the E or the electronic is not present. Digitalization is so important topic, having in mind that recommendations for introduction of digital procedures were those that were successfully implemented from the Grey Books, previous edition of the Grey Books. We mentioned electronic public procurements, electronic procedures for application of seasonal workers, digitalization of the tax reports for flat rate taxpayers, elimination of issuance of excerpts from various registers and so on. Corona taught us digitalization is not the issue of trend, but actually the issue of the pressing need and preservation. Development of digital economy is successfully implemented, and those that will be successfully implemented in the future, all of the projects, is something that we want to talk about with our partners. Today, with us is the Minister of Labor, Employment, Veterans and Social Affairs, Daria Kisić-Tepavčević, Her Excellency Shane McLeod, Ambassador of the United Kingdom to Serbia, Head of the EU Delegation to Serbia, His Excellency Sam Fabrizi, and the Director of the Office for IT and E-Government, Mihailo Jovanović. Mrs. Tepavčević, I would like, if you allow me, I would like to start, with asking you a question. Corona taught us, the COVID-19 token was also, attached to other recommendations. For example, regulating the work of so-called flexible forms of work, such as freelance work and so on, or other forms of online work that require new solutions. What are the plans of the ministry in terms of dealing with this recommendation? Firstly, I would like to congratulate you, the 13th annual conference, and I hope that next year's Grey Book is going to be much thinner, that there will be less challenges that will require solutions. You mentioned certain challenges with which many countries are facing right now. technological advancement led to having a need to development of new forms of work, so-called labor or worker engagement that we didn't have in previous years. But the last decade actually is the decade of expansion of the new form of work engagement. Therefore, compared to 2010, we had a 53% increase in work engagement, those called non-standard forms of work engagement, compared to 2010 that we have in 2020. In terms of in total, employment in the country, this figure is still low. EU average is 90%, 19%. It's still not. We're still far away from that. We need to be ready for this new situation, and all the legal basis for that, or legal framework, should be adapted in terms of the aspects related to taxation, and also in terms of the incentives that should be provided to the workers, working in this sphere. Therefore, the umbrella law is the labor law. However, there's a series of other laws that are being drafted right now. We know that platforms have not been recognized as employers, but there are a lot of new online engagements that we see in our countries. We not only think about that, but we are actually working on that. Also, there is a series of, jobs that are done, from home. COVID, quickly led us to that way of thinking. But even before COVID, this, work from home form of engagement was there. We prepared a guideline for a safe work from home. It has certain specifics, yes, but it also, raises another question, which is the safety of work, inside a house, inside your home. For example, it's very difficult to do the supervision and such. So there's a series of new questions or new issues that emerged that are not only related to the area responsibility of the Ministry of Labor, but we have to have a synchronized, activities of several ministries. The amendments of the labor law are expected because this law is from 2014. It definitely requires improvements, various improvements, because the work process has changed, and it's clear that we need to change the law. But there are also other laws that are currently implemented that must be amended. So your recommendations are those that we have. We recognize ourselves, but in a systematic way, as you do it always. You have presented them, and you also provide a recommendation. And these are actually the guidelines that we are going to use in the coming period.
Thank you a lot for your response. I was warned by the organization that we are a little bit late, and they expect that we work digitally and efficiently. Mr. Jovanovic, in addition to your work, which is the Office for IT and E-Government, you had the building of the E-Center, the portal of E-Health, unique center for immunization. You have also developed the program of E-Government development in Serbia. Can you briefly tell us about it? Thank you, Željko, for this question. In the past 3 or 4 years, we did a lot to digitize a lot of things in e-government. We adopted several laws and actually developed services and infrastructure for e-government development. citizens realized what e-government is. We use the principle that they come to one point, to one stall, and they can do everything using electronic systems. C2G system. Person comes and finishes everything at one point. So we have the system ESOP for the exchange of data, e-baby, e-recipe system, and that is where citizens realized how important e-government is. When we speak about the future, I would like to call that total e-government. When we have laws and infrastructure and everything, we develop services that will totally be available through the internet. And I will tell you just about a few examples. One of them is the system of entering children into high school without going to school at all. You can register the child in a high school and do everything through the internet. The data of the public government will be at disposal to banks, and people will be able to take loans without going to the bank. Also, we would like to include foreigners in addition to domestic citizens who are registered at the portal of e-government. And foreigners, even before they come to Serbia, they can become e-citizens of Serbia and use the services of e-government. Other two things that I would like to mention, which are key to the reforms, and that is the single information system of education. And for the first time, we will have all data in one system from kindergartens to universities, and we will follow the success of our students and the pupils until their employment. And people will not have to bring the fifth copy for checkup with the Ministry of Interior and other bodies. We will enable people to have a new type of payment in the Republic of Serbia. We shouldn't be modest, and I can say that NALED contributed a lot to this e-government, and I am looking forward to our future cooperation. Your Excellency, Ambassador MacLeod, the government of United Kingdom, through their Good Government Fund, supported a number of good projects in Serbia in order to have digital procedures, and one of the most useful ones was introduction of a single stall register of a cadastre called e-stall, and that was one of the recommendations. In 2.5 years, we reached a number of million registers. How do you see this reform now? Thank you for your question. I will speak English.
Baš dobro kako švedski kolega na srpskom. So I'll speak English. The UK government, through its Good Governance Fund, since 2015, I think has supported something like 65 projects, about £20 million worth, with a real focus on digitalisation and e-governance. I think this is very important because this is, it's the key to building a healthy, modern economy that serves citizens. Really pleased to hear of the continuing success of this particular project and the property registration system. We supported some of the other projects that have already been mentioned, like EBEBE, but this is important. It's important for a sort of a fair society. It's important for rule of law. It's important for a healthy business environment. And I believe that this particular reform helps both the construction sector and the real estate sector. And I think we can all see as we walk around, even despite the difficult conditions of the last year, you know, what a difference that can make to the face of this city and the country. So I think, yeah, it's an important area. I think it also was important earlier, the first panel I think referred to the ease of doing business, World Bank ease of doing business. Again, I believe this is an important contribution to that. So, yeah. Keep up the good work, though. More to do.
Thank you. And Your Excellency, Mr. Fabrizi, European Commission at the annual level estimates the progress of Serbia for preparation to enter the membership in EU, and how can digitization help us to be better prepared for accession and improve the business environment?
Professor Tomic, every Prime Minister, colleague, Minister, it's a great pleasure to be again for my fourth time to NALED presentation. I think it's for us is an organization and a product of this organization that goes in the same direction as us. Many of your recommendations are our recommendations, so it's very, very useful for us. Certainly the question you made is how the digital can help accession and improving business environment. Certainly it's a wide concept. Maybe I will try to make few key elements. The first one is a sort of preliminary one, is that the digital, together with the green agenda, I like your green tie, is one of the two driver of the EU recovery. You saw that the EU has adopted its multi-financial plan for the next 7 years, together with this budget for the economic recovery, will be overall 1.8 trillion euro over the next 7 years. They put digital and green at the core. So the first reflection I would say there is, as Serbia is economically integrated, mostly and largely integrated with the EU, between 60 and 70% of trade and investment of Serbia came from the EU region. It's clear that the more Serbia invests in digital and green policies, the more Serbia will benefit from the EU recovery plan. So if you look at the specific of the accession, the long certainly will be long, but certainly we can define some elements. Something has been said before, reform of public administration. I think is one of the first reform, the Serbian opening accession with the EU in 2014, as EU, and the public administration reform is to redesign the relation between institution on one side and the citizen and business on the other side. You heard about the beauty and the complexity of EGovernment. It's important to give services to the citizen. It's a question of efficiency. It's a question of cutting red tape. E-health, I think, is under the eye of everybody of us. How much also Serbia has successfully embraced in the vaccination process the possibility to have e-health. In the panel before, there's been spoken about procurement, e-procurement. That was one of the recommendations by last year in the Grey Book of NALED, how much e-procurement can improve effectiveness, increase transparency, reduce the level of corruption. But certainly we can also expand to judiciary. We are launching with Serbia a big project of case management system, so how we can use digitalization in the judiciary reform. This is a public administration reform, as after we can have education, innovation and research. How much Serbia has a strong IT sector, but certainly more can be done to link Serbian research and innovation into EU system, global, like Horizon 2020, or how digitalization can be used to modernize some traditional sector like agriculture, or which Serbia is also rely upon. Question of connectivity, how Serbia can build with trusted technology, with secure technology, roll out broadband. You will, through the broadband, you will overcome or try to overcome the divide between urban and rural zone. You can design the smart working for the future, the e-learning, and certainly you can also build a regional market in terms of a roaming fee, in terms of e-commerce, and etc. And maybe the last point, it will be climate. EU has the ambition to create Europe as the first carbon neutral continent by 2050, and certainly the digital economy will play an important role, how to make an economic growth neutral from a climate point of view. As I said, the list could be long. You can add data protection, how digitalization should introduce a higher level of privacy of our data. So the question of how Serbia will embrace the GDPR, this EU system on data privacy, how Serbia will benefit from digitalization for the common agriculture policy reform. So there's a lot of area. At the end of the day, digitalization should be seen as a sort of, we call it a cross-cutting enablers. They can go through the different area of the accession reform, and certainly as a key role. And I think in Serbia, embracing this digital reform and digital agenda is going certainly in the right direction.
Hvala vam. Pomenuli ste.
Thank you a lot. You mentioned digitization of agriculture, and some people were surprised because we should have had the Minister of Agriculture here with us, but he wasn't able to come here. Our advantage in economic terms are agriculture and then IT technology, and the biggest advantage is application of IT and digitization in agriculture. Mrs. Stepavčević, one of the priority recommendations of the Grey Book of Knowledge, marked by a COVID badge, is the expanding of e-registration of seasonal workers to other sectors. Which new things will be included? So, as you said, led by these excellent results that were obtained after the simplified ways of worker register in agriculture, we developed a number of new ideas on how to expand them to new activities, which were recognized as fields where gray zone is developed. So that was in construction, tourism, catering, and, for example, help at home, like cleaning services. So 27,000 workers were registered in this way, which is 10 times more than a year ago. And the taxes that were paid was 245 million dinars. So that is a great benefit for all people who are registered in this way, and also for the country, for the state. So we recognize that these fields need to be enabled to have workers registered in this way, because at this point these people are working in the gray zone and they are not registered, and that is why we are working on the ways and laws that will simplify the registration of workers in these fields. Now we are in the phase of producing the draft law, which we are expecting to adopt in the coming period. Your Excellency, Mrs. MacLeod, Good Governance Fund supports the registration of seasonal workers and its expansion to new sectors, such as the jobs of cleaning at home, construction, and tourism. You have been in Serbia for some time. Which other procedures do you see as candidates for e-registration?
It would be a bit presumptuous of me to say exactly what I thought, what else is suitable for e-registration. But yes, we're very happy to support this project. The Minister mentioned the benefits to your state finances, but of course the key to this is balancing the interests of the workers, the employers and the state. And I think we've seen in this horrible coronavirus year that we really have between us two priorities, right, embodied in the Minister here, that is the public health, but also how to keep the economy and employment alive during this difficult time. We've already heard some of the areas this is going to be extended to. And I think it's really important with this reform that this isn't just about gathering money for the state. Of course, as a state employee, we all welcome that. But it's about providing that extra social support and safety and security for freelance workers. And I know, I'm sitting here as an ambassador now, but when I started out my working life over 30 years ago, my original ambition was to be a freelance musician. So I know very well what an insecure life being a freelance worker can be. I never earned enough money to pay tax, and perhaps if I was still a freelance musician, I still wouldn't be earning enough money to pay tax. But, you know, so I think it's very important providing that extra support. I know time will be short, so I would just like to say, I won't say specific things that I think digitalisation can be extended to, but I do think, picking up what others have said and in the earlier session, I do hope that next year there will be increasing focus on environmental projects. I've been looking through the programmes. I know interesting proposals on beekeeping, but I think there are bigger opportunities, probably including digitalisation, in the environmental field. And as we look ahead to the big climate change conference at the end of the year, I think that's an incredibly important area for us to be working together on reducing the impact of and slowing down man-made climate change and doing more to protect our environment.
Thank you, Mihailo. I will leave you for the end of this session, for the conclusion. For Mr. Fabrizio, we have a question. EU has continually been supporting the reforms of Serbia and bringing them into accordance with EU standards. What are the plans of EU for support to the more business-friendly environment in the field of e-digitization, especially?
I said also in a previous reply, the EU accession is a economic and business-friendly accession. Is based on the tenet of the way we have achieved economic prosperity within the EU. So basically, it's the single market, and certainly in these new phases, we see, as I said before, digital and green as the two great drivers for accession. Certainly, when we look at the accession and we look Serbia from this point of view, our tools are usually of two types. So, a policy guidance and financial tools to support this policy guidance. Every year, the Commission make a report with the reading of the state of accession. But also, Serbia produced its own policy document, and I think it was important also to remind the economic reform program. The Minister of Finance sent last week to the ECFIN, so to the Ministry of Finance, if you want, in Brussels, the economic reform program of Serbia is a very detailed document, and basically how to improve economic governance there. You see reform on digitalization, health, on public reform, state-owned enterprises. Certainly is a pro-business agenda. In addition to this document, we provide some tools, financial tools, as I said. When we look at this financial cycle, 2021-2027, the Commission has laid out economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans, with the idea, as I said before, as Europe grows, Serbia grows with the EU, but certainly we need also some specific financial tools. So the budget of the EU gives us the possibility to put on the table 9 billion euro of grant, plus some insurance scheme that should help to reduce costs for private and public investors to leverage private investment. So the best scenario we need to always, with the caveat, is to mobilize between 25 and 28 billion euro for the region over the next 7 years. So certainly this is a strong impact and strong financial support. The area is there, so link to reform, link of, again, to the focus on digital and green, which will be the driver for the growth. And maybe last point also to look at the common regional market. Serbia is among the players in the region who are doing a lot of work to make the Western Balkans a common regional market. There's a lot of work on the movement of people or trade or investment based on the internal single market of the EU. So when you look together, the policy guidance, when you look at the financial tools together we see, I think we can be seen certainly, and we want to achieve a pro-business agenda. And of course, through the accession, you go in detail on the different areas that goes from the rule of law to the business environment, from taxation to environment. So from that point of view, the business continue to be one of our most strongest players and advocacy for Serbia accession to the EU. So that's why I'm particularly pleased that NALED continue to be one of our closest partners in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I zadnje pitanje za gospodina Jovanovića.
The last question from Mr. Jovanovic. E-government cannot take on its full life without a full implementation of e-delivery in all, institutions of the public sector. This is one of the recommendations. Also, citizens should become e-literate. How much has been done in this regard? There are two reasons why we go with this citizens project. The first thing is setting up a national portal for electronic identification, is letting us, have citizens with one account, and with that account they can visit any national portal. We have around 1 dozen services that are in the system now. E-health portal, for example, also other portals such as My Diary portal that we set up a few days ago. Also, why e-citizen? Second reason why e-citizen? With the various levels of electronic identification, citizens will be able to use various e-services. We have 4 levels now, so they can use the e-services anonymously. For example, services that were related to COVID pandemic, such as, registering for vaccination and, PCR tests or registration for PCR testing and delivery of the results. Then we have new quality of signature and the authentication. For two-factor authentication, and the certificate citizens will have to identify, will have to go to one counter. We together with NALED, we have established the e-citizen, in the post offices, in the municipalities, in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Citizens can do this identification. Thank you everyone for an interesting discussion. As I already said, digitalization has its smell in everywhere we do. More than 40 recommendations from this Grey Book in this other way are directly or indirectly related to digitalization. I expect, and I'm happy that in the near future the recommendations are going to be implemented, and we will be working on the development, working together on the development of the digital economy. Thank you very much. Thank you again. Thank you to all panelists. We are sure that today's discussions and international experience will contribute for implementation of much more recommendation this year that we have in the Grey Book. Since this is it's time for the conclusion of the work part of the working part of the conference. I would like to ask Mr. Tanazov to join me over here. When we talk about priorities, let's see how the public or the audience has actually voted. According to our results, the most important recommendation, according to your assessment, is the reduction of the burden paid against the salaries, taxes and benefits, and 55% of votes. Then improvement of the wastewater treatment system, and then establishment of the electronic healthcare card. It looks like the Prime Minister is going to have a lot of work to be done for these 100 recommendations to reach the government office. And I would like to ask the Prime Minister to join me over here to take her copy of the Grey Book and then to say a few words, give her reflection on what's in the latest edition of the Grey Book. Please. Good afternoon. I'm glad that I'm here today for another again on the NALED's annual event, and I had this opportunity to talk about the latest edition, the 13th edition of the Grey Book. I would like to use this opportunity to express my gratitude to NALED, the National Alliance for Local Economic Development, to the Executive Office of NALED, and the whole membership of NALED for their years-long support in reforms, for helping us to identify the key reforms and then helping us to implement these reforms together, for Serbia to become the country with the favorable business environment and the quality of life for citizens better. There's a very difficult year is behind us, 2020. Difficult for the Republic of Serbia, difficult for the entire Europe, for the whole world. With challenges I think nobody expected. Many things surprised us, and we've been surprised, from one day to another, not only in Serbia, but in the whole Europe and the whole world. A year where we had to deal with certain priorities that we didn't see or plan to work on in 2019. We didn't prepare budgets for them, for businesses, civil society organizations, or local governments to stay on track. 2021, the year ahead of us, is another difficult year, filled with challenges. The easiest way to say this is that our goal in 2020 was to find a good enough balance, but good enough, how we do it, but good enough, balance, to strike a balance between the healthcare system soundness, business environment, doing business properly, and the life, and I would add the mental healthiness of our nation. And this was what we strive to do into 2020. We will have to work on that definitely until the end of the first half of 2021, and possibly, throughout the whole year. Depends on how the immunization process unfolds in Serbia and in the whole Europe and the world, because we are not an island. Even if we and our are safe in what we are doing, but if our partners and our neighbors are not doing the right job, then everybody's going to suffer the consequences. But we will have to deal with that. I think that health-wise and business-wise, we managed to get, to achieve good results. Health-wise, despite all the challenges that emerged, out of nowhere, as I said, nobody budgeted for these problems, but we managed quickly to procure everything that's needed to support our healthcare system and keep and save as many lives as possible. We managed to allocate huge, extraordinary amounts of money from our budget to find suppliers, signed contracts, procured a lot of, masks, gloves, contactless thermometers, and everything that we needed. We managed to find the money in our budget to sign contracts and actually purchase a lot of respirators, which was probably the biggest challenge last year, and other medical equipment and supplies that was needed. We managed to, with a lot of efforts invested by all elements and all institutions of our system, and we managed to purchase innovative medicines. Every day was recommended by the World Health Organization, not for curing or treating coronavirus, but actually mitigating the consequences of those that were infected, that were facing with the most severe symptoms. Those medicines were very expensive, but everything that was recommended, we managed to procure for our citizens in Serbia. The medical part of our, emergency team, our crisis team, together with our experts and our researchers, they, were observing what was going on, worldwide in terms of trends, and managed to, acquire the protocols immediately. So we had 10 changes of protocols in order to have the most efficient treatment of those that were infected. We bought enough tests, and we are still buying new tests. During the pandemics, we managed to hire new medical workers to strengthen the system. We managed to get them involved into the system, and that was not an easy thing to do. We managed to encourage financially our medical workers. This severe crisis, which has impacted our budget, significantly, not only Serbia, but globally, we managed to, raise the salaries 10%, and then 15%, and then 5% additionally in January 2021. And we also paid additionally 10,000 dinars as a incentive to all employees of the healthcare system. Managed to build 2 completely new hospitals, which are working only, for COVID patients. And after the crisis, we will have this as new facilities for the better healthcare system. And of course, procurement of vaccines was the biggest challenge. So today, Serbia can offer the citizens for various vaccines from various producers and manufacturers, and managed to organize in the best possible way the immunization or the vaccination process, which was another challenge that we faced. So we put all of this into one place, a healthcare system and coronavirus struggle, which was severe for all of us. I think we achieved the best possible results. As regards to economy, the end of 2020, we actually we were among the best we had in Europe in terms of the economic results. In early 2020, it was impossible to talk about about economic growth during 2020, but we had the lowest GDP drop comparing to other countries. This is not the economic parameter, but if we look at other parameters, we can say that we can be proud we can be proud of what we did. I talk here about the government, the businesses, the civil society organizations. I talk here about all sectors that are fighting. And thanks to their efforts, we managed to achieve this result. Our industrial output in 2020, in a disastrous 2020, was 0.4%, higher than in 2019. This is an indication of how good, how good our results, how measures were successful, how timely were the measures, and how strong and our businesses, our economy, and new members of NALED, and how much investors still continue to trust both domestic and foreign in the Republic of Serbia and its future. Why? Because in the worst possible times, when the whole world, where all countries were, actually cutting jobs and employments was skyrocketing, we had openings of new industrial facilities, of new research centers. This is very significant. Why? Because the investors from the most conservative countries were coming to Serbia to invest in the Republic of Serbia, such as from Japan and Germany. I think this speaks the most of how people, or what trust people have in our future. During 2020, when the unemployment was going up, here in Serbia, the number of employed in Serbia, we actually had a growth of employment. The salaries actually continued to grow, and as far as I know, we're the only country in Europe that actually managed to raise salaries and pensions, and we minimum wage was also raised. Then salaries in the public sector were also raised. 5% public debt is still under control, which is another thing that we can be proud of, and it's still below 60% against 50% of the GDP, 60% of the GDP. When we, to our bottom line, we can say two things that are fascinating. First, one is that we had the best economic results in Europe in 2020, and the second, that we have the second in Europe by number of those that have actually got the vaccine, and the first in Europe. In terms of those that got the second shot of the vaccine. This is the new Serbia. This is the new Serbia. This was something that we couldn't even imagine a few years back, that we are the first or the second in Europe in these kind of things, excluding sports or, mathematics, physics, or music. I think this is a different country, and everything that happened, and I said it a few times, but I need to say it again, because it's actually a wind, it's a tailwind for us. This didn't happen just like that. These are the results of hard work in 2090, and fiscalization measures and all measures that were then initiated. Some people were laughing at our measures, but now today they can see the results. All things that we initiated in 2016 and 2017 in the field of digitalization, which actually during the crisis has provided the greatest results. And finally, as the final result of our efforts, if in the ministry, in the law ministries, if we didn't, establish the IT office as the central body coordinating all activities of the Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Local Government, of the Ministry of Health, and all other ministries and agencies, without IT office, we wouldn't be able to do such a good job in vaccination. In regard to vaccination, if we didn't, train our people to use e-portal, to use other e-services such as construction permits, getting certificates, acquiring certificates, we wouldn't have such a good result. Without digitalization, we wouldn't be able to move immediately to online education. I know it wasn't perfect, but we are among the rare countries in Europe which didn't miss on a single day of education in single school day in 2020. And there were other many more successful countries, that had bigger problems with the online education. We could have continued. We managed to continue, enrollment in schools, in high schools, in universities. Because of that, imagine how the public administration would look and provision of services would look if we did not introduce automatic electronic data exchange in 2017, on June 1st, 2017. Thanks to that, public administration, local governments, since then have exchanged 22 million data pieces since then. So it means that 22 million times our citizens did not need to go to the counter or go to pick up paper and move it to another counter or office. So imagine this we had the situation as the previous one within this environment of the pandemics. As far as I'm concerned, if you ask me, in addition to everything we did in 2014, that has given these results, the most direct reasons for such a good results in 2020 were the timely measures and digitalization. Timely measures support to businesses and citizens, and digitalization of our entire system. So when we think about 2021 and perspectives of 2021, I would say that we are continuing the measures of support. In Q4 2020, we knew that we are going to face this kind of situation in 2021, and that Corona is not going to disappear just because 2020 is finished. That's why we prepared the third package of measures worth 259 billion dinars. And when you look at the third package, total support to businesses and citizens was worth as 8 billion euros. Unbelievable. 8 billion euros for such a small country. In 2021, as I said, a lot of challenges are in front of us, and more ambitious plans are in front of us. Despite of coronavirus, same as in 2020, we don't plan just to, fight Corona. We plan to continue everything with everything we planned before Corona, because Serbia must not stop, it must not wait, and our growth and development must continue, same as taxes and salaries must continue to grow. why? Because many years and many decades we lost before 2014 in doing nothing. Therefore, we expect, and I'm actually aware that we are going to have full support of NALED. One of the first priorities will definitely be a further reform of the healthcare system, digitalization of the healthcare system. One of the systems that we actually saw now how important it was, and which will be so important and sensitive in future. We have a coordination body for digitalization of the entire healthcare system. We set it up during in the first 100 days of the new government. NALED has its representatives there. One of the first things that we're going to work on, and I see it's among your priorities, is definitely establishing the electronic healthcare booklet, something that's going to be a big help to both citizens and business, and I expect this to be in the next 2 months.
In addition to this, I would like to add to what Mrs. Kisic-Tepavčević said. The big thing that we are working on is the expansion of the scope of and register of workers and in agriculture to tourism and other sectors. We are helping to combat gray economy, shadow economy, and we are building a system that is more stable. Together with Mrs. Kisic-Tepavčević, we are working on more things that we are working together on with NALED. One of them is introduction of social cards, and I am glad that the law was adopted by the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia, and we are now going on with its implementation. We mustn't make any mistakes with it. This is one of the key reforms for the most socially endangered people in the Republic of Serbia. And that is also part of the digitization of our system. And in this field, we can speak about another important law that we are working on together with NALED, the law on non-standard employment. So we are going to face the challenges and accept the modern trends of digitization. There are so many people in Serbia who work online, and for an employer who is not, maybe sometimes for employers who are not registered in the Republic of Serbia, we want to keep them, we want them to pay taxes to Serbia, and we want to provide them with pension and health insurance because they are our citizens. And that is one really complex law that we will start working on. So there are many things, maybe I spoke for too long. There are many things ahead of us. We have many ambitious plans. So in the field of combating shadow economy, online fiscalization is very important, and NALED advocated for it for a long time, and Mr. Mali is implementing it. There's so many other things that will help us have a more transparent system. And together with all that I mentioned as key reforms, we continue with building our infrastructure, the road infrastructure, educational, health infrastructure. And at the end of 2021, I expect Serbia to be a much stronger country. Like I started, I will also finish by expressing great gratitude to all members of NALED who help us on a daily basis by pointing to things that can be done in a better way and to innovative solutions. We in the government are supposed to listen to them and continue with supporting those solutions. And I hope that at the end of 2021, we will be able to say that Serbia is one of the most successful countries in Europe. Thank you, Prime Minister, for your speech. Thank you for reminding us of what was done in last year. And now we reach the celebratory part of our ceremony, and that is that are awards for the best reforms, which will be introduced by Mr. Atanasov. Hvala najlepše.
Esteemed Prime Minister Brnabić and government members, Your Excellencies, NALED members and partners. I'm highly pleased and honored to open the ceremonial award of recognitions to outstanding individuals and teams that partnered with NALED and invested strong personal effort, provided noteworthy contribution towards improving the business environment in 2020. We left behind a year of great challenges, as we all know, and unforeseen circumstances caused by the pandemic, and as a result we decided not to present the Top Performer Award. But this doesn't stop us from giving credit to public officers who showed that even at a time of extreme crisis and emergency situation, they wish and can make a step forward and bring about something new and good within their lines of duty. We also traditionally award a recognition to journalists and editors promoting the reforms, being masterful in selecting the key pieces from an ocean of information, especially this year, and presenting the one that essentially impact our lives, pointing out their importance and why they deserve the public attention. On behalf of NALED Management Board, as well as 300 companies, local governments, and civil society organizations within NALED, I would like to congratulate this year's winners for well-deserved recognitions and appeal to all decision makers on the national and local level to facilitate an even stronger reform activity in 2021, so that through dialogue and cooperation, the number of reform laureates at the next year event gets doubled at least. Thank you very much.
Hvala lepo, gospodin Atanasov. Da bi reforme...
Thank you, Mr. Atanasov. In order to get the public attention, we need media, and that is why we will start this award ceremony with journalists who worked on the reforms and helped them in the previous year. So first I would like to announce our first winner, the editor of the economic column in Danas journal, with over 160 publications. Danas supported initiatives coming from the economic circles and followed NALED. This daily paper helped the solidarity of socially responsible companies and their cooperation with local communities. We would like to thank you and congratulate you and Danas. For reforms in the field of education, to the editor of the program of RTS in Serbia, Mr. Ilija Cerovic. Online teaching during the pandemic wouldn't be that successful if it was not supported by RTS. RTS invested all its capacities to make teaching available to all pupils in elementary and high schools. RTS was also supporting the teaching during COVID-19, and over 700 teachers from the country joined this action. Also the award for individuals and teams for the biggest contribution to changes and reforms. So in our fight against the pandemic, we owe a lot to these winners. The first award is given to the team of the Republic of Serbia for joint contribution to overcome the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic and the improvement of online teaching, the donations to the healthcare system, and removal of redundant procedures. So we were shown that this by Stefan Badja, the advisor in the cabinet of the Prime Minister, Daniel Nikolic, General Director, Assistant in the sector of international cooperation. Milan Pasic, Assistant to the Minister of Education. Dr. Goran Stamenkovic, Assistant to the Minister of Health, who coordinated the inspections in 245,000 epidemiological inspections, and he will receive on behalf of them this prize. So please give them one applause. So we can proudly say that we are sixth in the world and the second one in Europe when it comes to the number of vaccinated citizens. And because of e-registration for vaccination, we, in a very short time, organized vaccination of over 1 million citizens. So also we have a single system for immunization, and that is why we give the award to the manager, the head of the sector for e-government, Mr. Mihajlo Jovanovic. Last year, he was also in charge of the introduction of the service of giving the decisions of the cadastre to the post boxes of citizens. Also, he supported the service of opening the profiles of citizens on the portal, and he is advocating and working on the introduction of more useful services. The last award for today will be given to the person who, together with NALED, created the measures that helped us keep workplaces. Last year, Serbia had a package of 6 billion euros to help these reforms as the biggest package in Southeastern Europe and 10th one in Europe. That is why I would like to applaud the winner of the special award for improvement of the regulatory framework for business doing in Serbia and creation of measures to support economy. That is the State Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Mrs. Slavica Slavičić. Mrs. Savicic had a big role in implementing the recommendations of the Grey Book to combat and measures to combat shadow economy, including the reduce of taxes on salaries, digital fiscalization, and introduction of e-invoices, and the third cycle of the prize-winning game, Take the Receipt and Win. So once again, we congratulate you on this contribution. At the end of the conference, I would like to ask all members, all participants, all guests of NALED to join us at the stage, make a proper distance, but also have a joint photo.
Ova zajednička fotografija
This joint photograph will be the end of our today's meeting, and once again we would like to congratulate to all winners and representatives, and we have a number of recommendations that we will present in our next Grey Book. Thank you all for your attention.